Boy, it's great to see so many people already with their first cup of Joe and sitting here with us. Thanks for joining so early.
Exactly. I just want to introduce myself first and then our speaker. My name is Bill Amirault, and I want to welcome all of you to Career Clarity and Purpose. I'll be speaking with 14 different people all day today. And in this live event, which is being recorded, my panel of experts will reveal their strategies to provide career clarity aligned with your true purpose. There may have been many things that have happened to you during COVID, before, during, and after, and maybe you're part of the Great Resignation. But what we're here to do is to provide you with the information that will give you insights into your own career clarity. And my first guest today is Paul Cecala, who is a certified career coach and has posted some great and wonderful things on LinkedIn and has had some great experiences as a lead career navigator, career coach, career counselor, and a keynote speaker. And he's also been manager of workforce development for North Jersey Partners. And Paul, thank you for taking the time today to discuss some of the career clarity issues that you and I have spoken about offline.
Sure. Glad to be here. And it's good to see a couple of great friends with us. Guests that you've got coming up too, Terry and Joey. I'm glad both of you are here, and as well as everyone else.
Sounds great. So let's get right to it. And I want to get a little bit into your background so that people can understand how you morphed into the position that you're in right now. And what does this mean in terms of the clients that you serve, et cetera, et cetera. So if you could describe the different careers that you've had or different, positions within that career, and then how those have developed you into what you do today.
Sure. And I have often said, it's all about finding and following your passion. A lot of people, kind of go down that road. And so my passion in high school was to become an astronaut. And ultimately, I went to college to learn how to fly and to possibly get into the astronautics program. Well, that didn't fully happen. I do have my pilot's license. So I did a 15-year career in corporate aviation where I managed flight departments and also chartered their aircraft out when the companies weren't using them to the rich and famous. A really glamorous career, but it was also a 24/7, 365 career. I often tell people I can count on one hand the number of Thanksgiving dinners that I had with my family in 15 years because of that career. And when I left there as the vice president of charter sales, I said, what's really next? And my passion had always been teaching, education. So it was like, how do I transition from this aviation sales role into post-secondary education, which was the space that I most wanted to be in.
Okay.
And as I was making that transition, I fell in love with the job search process. And so
wait a second, hold on a second. You fell in love with the job search process. You're going to be one of maybe out of 100 people who would say you fell in love with the search process.
You're absolutely right. I realize that may be a little weird, but I actually enjoy writing resumes. I think it's fun to network. And to me, the interview is a challenge for you not to hire me. I assume and expect that when I talk to you, you're going to say yes, right? And it's up to you to figure out why you're going to say no and prove to me why you need to say no. Now, that's what's happening up here. It's certainly not what I'm presenting to the interviewer, right? But I fell in love with that process. And so to make the transition, I went into career services, which ultimately was selling. I had to sell the employer on hiring this recent graduate who knows nothing but expects the world.
Mm-hmm.
I had to sell this recent graduate who thinks they should be CEO today, and why aren't you paying me that and giving me that role, into taking this menial, low-level, low-paying, entry-level position, right? So I went from a high-end sales to a different kind of sale.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you talk to almost any sales manager, they'd say this to you. If I'm a good salesperson, doesn't matter what the product or the service is, you can teach me that. I can then sell it. right? And so that's what I did. And I was very successful as the director of career services for a couple of for-profit trade schools. And then I did a little stint in workforce development with our local one-stop career center. And I
Okay.
did about 5 or 6 years in lifelong education and adult education and running the continuing education departments of 2 different colleges. During that whole time, I started hanging out my own shingle because I said, what I'm doing, I can get paid a lot more for if I'm doing it one-on-one than what I'm getting paid in the school. And
Understood.
ultimately, that's how I got to this point. So I've been in private practice now, solely full-time private practice for about 5 years. I've worked with over 3,000, almost 4,000 people at this point. I've developed the project planning methodology for your job search, and the people who use that methodology end up about 93% of them not only finding the job of their dreams, but also accepting that position, typically within about 4 to 6 months of starting their work with me. So I think I'm pretty good at what I do. I'm pretty successful. Most important, more than anything else, when I get up in the morning, I can't wait to get to my desk and start working because I just love what I do. And that's what I hope for you.
Well, the passion that you have shows through loud and clear. And you and I come from very different backgrounds, but we do very similar things. And I spent many years marketing products and services and selling them. And you mentioned that if you can sell one thing, you can be taught to sell anything else. And the mindset that goes along with the confidence that you're going to have to talk me out of why I'm the wrong person here. So all of that goes into the quote unquote marketing, which is the resume, LinkedIn profile, value proposition,
Right.
and sales, which is the outreach and the interview part of job search. So given all of that, I mean, you kind of mentioned this, but the next question is, how did these different transitions and really evolutions, the way you describe them, lead you to what you've been doing for the last 5 years? And what specifically has come out of that? You mentioned your process in terms of job search in 4 to 6 months and that kind of thing. But how did that all come together? And I did forget to ask you one other question. Did you go anywhere good when you were managing all those airline reservations for private jets?
So more often than not, no, I didn't go any fun places. I've been to Holland, Michigan in the winter, and that was kind of interesting. First time I saw sidewalks that were heated from underneath to melt the
Ah,
snow. But no, I've not been to any place exotic through that career, though I've sent people to a lot of exotic places or helped them get to and from exotic places. Some of my clients were Rosie O'Donnell, Dan Rather, Michael Jordan, Chevy Chase, Jim Belushi, Bill Murray. Um, the list of crazy names of people goes on and on and on. Some of them were really amazing people to work with. Some of
mhm.
them were really horrible people to work with.
Well, this
Um,
also, lines you up with difficult clients that you may be working with at different times too. So if you can
that's
deal
right.
with celebrities and their ups and downs in terms of how they go about things, I'm sure you can deal with pretty much any client as well. So,
Very true.
back to the question that I kind of sidebarred from, which is how did this all evolve into, let's just say, your last 5 years, which is what you're emphasizing a minute ago?
Sure. Sure. So while I was working as the director of career services and helping all these people who had recently gotten professional certifications
Hmm.
find their way into a career, I kind of felt like, as a friend of mine just said yesterday, Paul, you've got imposter syndrome, right? I felt like an imposter because here I am telling people how to find a job, but I have no real credentials, no real training in how to do that. And so I went to a friend of mine who became my mentor and was the vice president of coaches and coaches training for what was then called the 5 o'clock Club out of New York City, now called Get Five. And the 5 o'clock Club was founded by Kate Wendelton, who is an amazing, amazing career coach with some wild ideas for her time back in the 80s. And so he trained me, along with her vice president of coaches, how to be a career coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I got certified through their process as a career coach. That gave me the confidence and the understanding that, yeah, what I'm doing is the right thing and how to do it. It also afforded me some continuing education. Ultimately, about 3 or 4 years ago, I went on to become certified by the Center for Credentialing Education as a global career development facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
And so those things kind of all gelled and gave me the confidence to say, yeah, I really do know what I'm doing. I see people both in the school and a few people outside of the school getting their career confidence, getting their career goals, attaining those things. And now it was time for me to really make it happen for myself. And that's when I decided to go full time into this space.
Well, since you experienced this directly yourself, and I know I have, and probably everybody else who's on the line here. And by the way, if you do have questions as you're listening in, please put them in the chat and I will relay them to Paul as we go along here. We should probably another 20, 25, maybe even 30 minutes, depending on how this goes. But you mentioned imposter syndrome and overcoming that. What was it, the credentials that did it? Was a mindset thing? Was it a combination?
Yeah,
Because this is key in interviews, and you know this from working with as many people as you have.
it is key in interviews, especially when you're making that step up to that next level. And it was partly mindset. It was partly the credentials. It was partly my experience overall, seeing those progressions and people moving forward in their life. All of those things together, put me in the space that I could accept. Really do know what I'm doing. I really am good at it. And I really have a lot to offer other people. And I want to be able to do that. Right. And so that gave me the confidence then to go out and be the career coach that I am today.
And again, there are several people who will be on later today who will have similar stories coming from different angles, but I mirror the story that you're talking about from a totally different background. You've worked with a lot of obviously clients, organizations, maybe even small businesses. How did you either provide them space or support to create the career clarity that they came upon? I mean, probably a quarter of my clients are in some version of, I've been doing this for 20 years and I want to do something else, but I don't know what it is. Or I'm in a bad organization. I think I want to stay in this field. I don't know if I do or not. How do you manage those situations? And if you could give a couple examples, obviously without names,
Sure.
where people have started from a place of uncertainty, gone through what your process is, and then come out on the other side saying, yes, this is where I'm going. This is my direction.
I'm working with right now a COO at a relatively good sized university.
Mm-hmm.
And the question for him is, do I take the next step up to become a president, or do I stay at the COO kind of a level, right? Do I want the CE position or the CO position?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that we had to do to start that clarity process for him is really step back and say, what are my life goals?
Yeah.
Here I am today. When I retire, where do I want to be? What do I want other people to be saying about me? How do I want to be remembered post-career?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then what steps do I need to take between now and then to make that a reality? For example, with myself, one of my goals at retirement is that I want to be the coach that coaches go to say, Paul, how do we deal with this? Because I have no clue. Right?
Yeah.
Well, to be that coach, I need to be seen as the industry leader, the expert, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've decided I need to write a book or two. Well, I've got one out there already. See if I can grab it. It's a small little thing, I admit, but it's my first book, and it's called Work Search Buddies, Finding a Job with a Little Help from a Friend. Right? That book gave me instant credibility. It was crazy. All the work that I've done, all the certifications, but that book gave me instant credibility. I'm putting my second book together right now. It's going to be more of a workbook of all the things that you can do that will get you from what do I want to be when I grow up to accepting the offer, right? And I needed to do that. I need to be in the media as the person that they come to and say, Paul, we're looking for an expert to talk about this aspect of the job search. Would you be that expert for us, right? So I'm
Sure.
starting to work on that a little bit more. Another place that I need to work on, and I hate to make this sound like it's all about me. It's not, right? But the example that I can give without getting in trouble is using myself. So, now I'm also looking at how do I increase and improve my social media presence and become that expert there? How much more writing do I want to do? I saw one of my dear friends here, Terry Seaman. One of the
Mhm.
things that Terry does really, really well as a career coach is he's writing articles and blogs on a regular basis to get out there and be seen, right? And I think Jimmy Himmelfeld is here. He just wrote another book, or Himmelfarb. Sorry, Jimmy or Joey. Jesus, I'm totally wrong. Joey Himmelfarb. He's here. He just wrote another book, which is a great book, and he's doing more videos. And I have
Yes.
several other people that are doing a lot of videos, just like you are, Bill, right? Because it puts us out there in a space of we are an expert, right? So for you as an individual trying to change careers or trying to move forward in your career to take that next step, what are you doing to
Yes.
A, be seen by the hiring managers that you want to work with, and B, be seen as an expert in your field, or more specifically, in the role that you want next? And if you can create that brand, then you're going to go a long way.
Well, if everything you just said, plus I can resolve all the issues that you're facing right now. And being the expert who can do this, and you've mentioned several about how you've resolved the issues that either your clients are facing or other coaches are facing, et cetera. And I too have had speaking of books, had the good fortune of co-authoring a book called Finding God's True Purpose for Your Career. And it covers many of the things that you've been speaking about, probably from a different angle. And we should talk offline about that, because I'm very curious as to where that's going to go for you. Give an example, like you mentioned the person that you're working with right now, the COO, and whether he wants to go into the senior role. I got a message here that says your book is out of print, but that's okay. Somebody was looking as you were speaking about it.
So you can see my contact information. Contact me directly, and I will be more than happy to send you a copy.
Sounds great. And examples of besides the gentleman that you're working with right now, of others who have gone into the process like, hey, I'm not sure what it is I want to do, or how do I refine what I'm doing right now to get to a better destination? And you also pointed out, what do I want to be at the end of all of this? Who do I want people to remember me as? What's my legacy? And I use an exercise with permission in my book from an author called Matthew Kelly, and I call it The Next Steps in Life. And you look at today backwards and what did you learn? And then today forward, but you don't look at it from today, you look at it from your hospice bed backwards to today. And what do you want to define and manifest in your career and in your life? And it sounds very similar to what it is that you're doing. But a couple examples that people could relate to of mid-career type situations that you've worked with clients on.
Sure. I've got a gentleman I'm working with right now who's been part of a family business, and the business is doing really, really well. It ultimately sold to another organization, but he's maintained a high-level position. But
Mhm.
he's ready to move on. So we're working on where do I go next, and how do I project that to an employer that's going to say, wait a minute, you kind of owned this business for 30 years. Now you want to do something else and work for me, right? So we've had to refine and hone his branding documentation and his online presence to show, A, he's not only a leader and he's deserving of another leadership role,
Hmm.
but B, he's had to report to other people, whether it's stockholders, board of directors, or just the CEO. And
Hmm.
how did he do that in order to show them that he's ready to move on and work for somebody else? We just did an application for him for a role at NASA, as a matter of fact.
Hmm.
Um, and so he's really excited for that. Um,
So what you're saying then is you've positioned him to move across industries like I think Lou Gershner or whatever it was who went from Pepsi to IBM, and making a big difference in terms of the overall uh, career, let's just say the field or the category that they've been working in. So you've been able to position him so he can move into a different field than what he
exactly,
already had expertise in because of his
exactly.
leadership skills.
And that's the key, right? What does, and this is one of the, if you take nothing else from the hour that you and I spent together, right,
Hmm.
Bill, here's what you folks need to take from today from me.
Hmm.
It's not about you.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
about the hiring manager, right?
100%.
So if you put yourself in the shoes of that hiring manager and you think about what does that individual need to know about me to hire me, what are their needs? What are their wants? What are they looking for? What do they not know that they need, but you can see that they need, and you can help them to see that they need? And then how do you talk about those things in their language, not your past language,
That's right.
so that you are positioning yourself to be the perfect candidate for this role?
And what you're saying is so critical because people, used to use, let's call it an elevator pitch. I'm a this, and I do that, that, and that. One of the things that I coach people on is don't say anything until you know what their issues and problems are, until you
That's right.
confirm what they are. And then you line up all your key accomplishments and things in your value proposition that will exactly address what it is that they need.
Look, you can tell I love to talk.
Yeah, that's, that's
Right?
why you're here. That's why you're here.
But one of the first and hardest lessons that I had to learn in my first sales role, ask a question and shut the hell up.
Yep.
You know, I would typically go into a customer, and here I am talking to the director of aviation for a Fortune 50 company who reports directly to the chairman of the organization, right? And I'm going in there with 10 minutes time and I do a data dump.
Yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
everything you need to know about my product and my company and me, and now buy from me, right?
Right.
And they were like turned off, already on to the next three problems before I finished talking. And oh, my 10 minutes with you is up, time to go, bye. Right? Never got a sale. But once I finally stopped and learned how to ask a question and listen with intention, clarity, and focus,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then as succinctly as possible, in as few words as possible, answer the question. That's when I became much, much more successful.
And as you well know, we're a soundbite society today. I mean, if you watch sporting
More so
events,
than ever.
well, you watch sporting events and at halftime they pull the coach aside and he might say 10 words in response. But if those 10 words hit the spot, that's exactly what they're looking for. You don't need 10 minutes to say what you can say in 10 words. And that's exactly right. And this is really key during the interview process as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. So, um, have you worked with clients as they're moving from their career pursuits into retirement?
I've worked with a few, and
Okay.
as we're getting up there ourselves, many of us, I'm looking at that for myself as well. What is
Hmm.
the next step? And one of the things that, and I wish I can remember where the statistic came from, but it was a scary statistic that I saw, I think through AARP.
Hmm.
People who do not have a plan for what they're going to do in retirement typically die within 3 years of retirement.
You are correct. I've seen that before. Yes. Hmm.
I don't want to be one of those that's dying within 3 years, right?
Well,
And
you have a lot of outside interests too, and a lot of things that you have your hands in and have contributed in many, many different ways. So I don't think that's going to be an issue for you. But as we talk about it, some of the people who are, on here, I know are either at or near retirement, and just wanted to bring that up in terms of your experience
Right.
there.
So what's your plan?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And the project planning process that I use for job search can work in figuring out what's your plan for retirement as well, because we're not talking the financial plan,
Right.
right? We're talking the activity plan, the thing that engages your mind, that engages your life and keeps you going and gets you so you want to get up in the morning.
Mhm.
What is it that you're going to do, and how do we figure that out? Right. So one of the things that I'm looking at for a lot of my clients is, when I retire, what are the mind activities that I most want?
Yes.
How am I going to keep myself active from a mental perspective? And does that mean, maybe I go get, pardon the pun, but the Walmart greeter job, because it's something to get me out of the house a couple of times a week and force me to get dressed and go do stuff and be with other people. Well,
Mhm.
hey, who cares about the money? Great, go do that because you need that stimulation, right? Do you want to be some kind of a coach? One of the reasons I'm in this field, as long as I can talk
Yeah.
and manage the technology, I, I can be a career coach.
Exactly.
So,
And pickleball and golf have something going on in this conversation as well, but
yep.
we'll leave that. We're coming up on about 30 minutes, and I wanted to make sure it was at least 30 minutes and give our audience a chance to ask some questions through the chat. And if anybody wants to put a question in there, please do so. But general recommendations on those who are going through this process of creating career clarity. Just your approach to this, and that'll kind of summarize what I wanted to speak to. And then obviously we'll leave some time for comments that you may have in general, but go ahead.
So here is one of the most important exercises that I ask my clients to do. Create an accomplishments list.
Yes. Mhm.
And I can go into great detail of what I mean by that, but start with, define accomplishment, something
Mhm.
I'm good at doing, something I'm proud to tell others, something I was successful at.
Yes.
If it meets those three criteria, it's an accomplishment, right?
Mhm.
So create that list. Now, you can break it down in a bunch of different ways and come up with all kinds of numbers. Typically, I would suggest that for roughly, you should have at least one accomplishment for pretty much however many years you are old.
Correct.
Right? At
Correct.
least one. One career coach once said to a group I was listening to, you should have 4 accomplishments from every year that you work. Because if every quarter you've not done something noteworthy, you're not doing well in your career, in your job. Well,
Or you're
all
not
right,
adding enough, or you're not adding enough value in one way or another. So
right,
yes.
right. So create this list. The more, the better, right? But if you don't have at least 20, you probably need to be thinking further.
Mhm.
And these accomplishments can and should come from all parts of your life, not just work. I had a client once who told me one of the greatest accomplishments in her life was learning how to tie her shoes at 7 years old. And without going through that whole story, what makes that significant is 2 things. One, most kids learn how to tie their shoes when they're 4 or 5. So she was behind by 2 or 3 years and not learning until she was 7. Number 2, it was a teacher who found her eye-hand coordination issue and gave her some exercises to improve on that, that turned it around. And to this day, at almost 55, 60 years old, she still reverts back once in a while when she's having issues to those exercises that her 2nd grade teacher taught her at 7 years old to improve her eye-hand coordination, and then she can move forward, right? So it doesn't matter where or when your accomplishment comes from. What matters is that it's an accomplishment. Prioritize that list. Then tell me the story in 2 minutes or less
Exactly
for each
right.
one of those accomplishments. And if you can tell me the story for the top 5 or 10, we can probably get a pretty clear picture of what you want to be when you grow up, whether it's 5 years old, 60 years old, 100 years old.
Yeah, and as you're saying this, a client that I worked with a couple of years ago was a warehouse manager at Costco for almost 20 years. And in the meantime, he gradually got his bachelor's degree and was working on a master's. But it turned out that his most significant accomplishment was some major nonprofit and church group related activities that he had done that
Sure.
showed tremendous leadership capabilities, putting together 50, sometimes 75 people for major projects. And he didn't even want to put them on there. And when I finally convinced him that, hey, dude, you got to put these there because these demonstrate the skills that you need for this next position, even if you didn't get paid for them. And that's the other thing is you don't necessarily have to be paid for things that you've had serious accomplishments with.
Exactly.
So yeah, couple of quick questions. From Greg, how does the concept of work search buddies contribute to your overall individual strategy?
It's a great question, Greg. And one of the biggest complaints that I've heard from people over the last 15, 20 years about job search is that I'm alone, I'm depressed, I don't have motivation, right? So can you find someone, or can I or your coach help you find someone who is at roughly the same place in their job search as you are? And how can you two together walk down that path together? And so I've used a career coach. In fact, John Gillen, who helped me with what's in the book, was I'm sorry, not career coach, work search buddy. John was my work search buddy. And, we checked in with each other every day. How are you feeling today? What are you accomplishing today? What are your goals, right? It's all about accountability.
Correct.
And so, he would say, Paul, today my goal is to reach out to these 3 companies and get to speak to at least one hiring manager in these 3 companies. Great, John. Let's see you make that happen, right? Tomorrow. So, John, you said you were going to call those 3 companies and talk to a hiring manager. How'd you do?
Right.
What worked? What didn't work? Let's brainstorm together how we can get you to be more successful at doing that. Because obviously two minds are always better than one, right? So the work search buddy can be not only that person that holds you accountable to you, but also someone that can cheer you on when you have success and can pick you up when you're maybe a little bit behind.
So
There's
is that
another
somebody that's in search also, or is that somebody that's already plugged in someplace and has the calm mind that can help you think through things you're blocked on?
Okay, so 2 people were talking at the same time, Greg, so just say it again.
I'm sorry, Bill was saying something, and I just thought the follow-up question was important. So is that person that's your work search buddy better to be a person who also is in search mode, or is it better to have somebody who's plugged in and calm and can help you think through the tough parts?
Well, your work search buddy is probably somebody else who's in search mode with you. But that doesn't mean you don't have a whole team of people that you're working with through your search, right? So that other person who's plugged in and calm, that's one of your mentors, right? But you should have a career coach. You should have a work search buddy. You should have 2 or 3 mentors or advisors that you can turn to and get guidance from them. And you should have, obviously the people who are important in your life, your spouse or companion, those kinds of folks, all on your team. They all have different roles. They all have different purposes. And I talk very briefly about that in the book. But you need and want that individual who is at the same time as you going through job search, work search together. And what I found is that if you've got 2 people who are in the same place, walking down that road together, typically they find a job within a month of each other.
Good. Great. Thank you. And sorry, Bill, to jump in on you there. I just thought
no, that's okay. That's the whole intent of, the Q&A at the end here. Thanks for jumping in. I guess, another phrase that I've heard used for what Paul is saying is a workout partner. And it typically applies to, exercise and diet and that kind of thing. But these are all important goals in terms of manifesting what you want in life. Obviously, career is what we're talking about today. So, the way you've described this, Paul, is totally in line with other areas of life as well. where
Yes.
it's somebody else who can, number one, hold you accountable, and number two, push you. Sometimes I say to my clients something like this: there are some days I'll give you a virtual hug, and some days I'll give you a virtual kick in the ass,
Yep.
because you may need one or the other, or maybe even both in the same conversation. So everything you're describing here, Paul, and I haven't read your book yet. I will. Coming up, we'll talk about that offline.
Well,
Let me see if I have it. Go ahead.
I got to tell you all, it is so small that, you sit down in the loo and in one seating, you can probably read through the whole thing. Will you be able to make it all work in one sitting? Maybe not, but you can read it that fast. It's that simple and short a book. And Greg, make sure that you have that whole team working with you together, because that's what's going to get you the fastest and the best success.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. And another question from Nick. My observation is that many people have clarity on what they would like to do. However, what is stopping them is that they can't make a living at it. In other words, it all comes down to the money. How do you deal with this?
Yeah. What I have found with numerous clients, as well as in my own career, if you are passionate about the work you do, you will find the success. It will come. You'll get the compensation that you want, because you'll also have the confidence to go and, I'll say, demand it, but you realize, you'll negotiate for that success. And if you're not getting it where you are, you'll have the confidence to go somewhere else where you can get it. Right. So what I'm finding with a lot of clients is they're afraid to ask for the money that they deserve. And so if you can lay out the case real clearly why you are the best at what you do, then your employer will be more likely to give you the compensation that goes with it. Now, in my case, just as an example, because it's happened with a lot of my clients as well, when I transitioned from aviation to career services, here I was in the mid 90s in aviation making 100 and a quarter, right? I transitioned to career services and was only making about 40 or 50. And my family was in a position where we could do that.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, within a relatively short period of time, we got that compensation back up to over 100, doing well again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because people recognized the value that I brought, the success that I had, and they wanted to compensate me.
Yeah, exactly. So any other thoughts on, not just creating career clarity, but you mentioned again, related to this question that Nick just had, also comes in under the heading of, quote unquote, imposter syndrome, and people not asking for the value they deserve. I think Bill Murray once said in a movie, there'll be no money involved, but when you die on your deathbed, you will receive. No, I'm just kidding. But how do you help people not only define what their value is, but then negotiate properly for it?
Sure. So, that's all about information and knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every career coach you talk to is going to tell you, you don't want to go into a negotiation without already knowing what the position is valued at. Hell, you don't want to go into the interview without already knowing what the position is valued at, and then deciding whether or not that is the right position for you based on that compensation level. Excuse me. In some cases, I've had clients just in fact, the week before Thanksgiving, a young woman I was working with negotiated a $20,000 increase in her offer because she had two offers at the same time, right? Or almost. And a part of my methodology is, let's look at how are we going to approach the companies we want to work for in a methodical way, so that when I get to those offers, I'm in a position of power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And real briefly, what I'm going to suggest is that you break down that total list of companies you're interested in into three segments: your A list, your B list, and your C list. take those C-list companies and do the networking and the interviewing there first.
Mhm.
You don't want to work for those companies,
All right,
but they're
so-
on your list. So go after them first. Make all your mistakes. Learn everything you have to learn, not only about the company, but also about the process. And then when you've honed in on that, because you won't be anxious or nervous going into them, you'll probably do better in the process. Once you're in the interview process and getting offers there, you should already now be starting to talk with your A-list companies.
Right.
And now you can get to the interview on an A-list and say, hey, listen, I've got an offer coming with this other company over here. I don't want to work for them. I want to work for you. How can we move this process along, right? Or as this client said to the two companies, listen, your offer in my C-list company, your offer is far below. I'm sorry, no, the offer was in the A-list company. Your offer is far below this offer that I'm getting from a C-list company. And it's really hard for me to say no to that offer because of the disparity.
Right.
How can you help me get closer? How can we bridge that gap so that I can say yes to working for you because you're the company I really, really want to work for?
And as you're saying this, I mean, this is one of my goals that I state right up front with any client. Our goal is to find you 2 or more viable positions at approximately the same time.
Yes.
So that you use the word power. I'll just use the word leverage, and
Yes.
they both come from the same place in terms of you saying, hey, I got an offer from company B, C, or D, but I want to work for you. Can you make it competitive to what it is? And they know what the market looks like. I mean, they're like any other business person or organization, they're going to try to get the most they can for the least they have to pay. So it's up
That's
to you to have the ability to negotiate. And part of that is the leverage with having more than one offer simultaneously.
And this young lady was able to go from a posting at $80,000 to a total compensation package of over 120, 125,000, but her salary jumped from the 80 to 100 because
Okay.
she had something with another company that was offering her 140 as a starting salary.
Which is great. And one of the other things that I've worked with clients on is the following. The job description may say, 5, 6 things, different things, but if you know that they need 7, 8, or 9, and you add those to the job description, all of a sudden you've bumped your value up without having to play real estate and just make a different number offer. And that can also work.
One of my favorite headhunters, executive recruiters,
Right.
Janelle Rosino from Rosino and Associates in Hillsdale, New Jersey. He always says, whatever you think you're worth, you need to add another 15 to 20% to it. And that's really what you're worth. So if you don't start asking at that level or going after positions at that level, you're going in the wrong place. And it's amazing that when you allow yourself the permission to do just that, how that becomes truthful to you.
100%. So I'm going to look one more time in the chat here and see if there are any other questions. A lot of people have put their contact information in there, which is great. I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of this, if you aren't already, that not just this recording, but all of the rest of them during the day, there'll be 13 more, will be available as a package called a VIP package. If you look at the invitation initially that you received, you'll also get a copy of the ebook that I produced called Finding God's True Purpose for Your Career, and a 30-minute consultation if you decide you want to do that. You'll have access to those links for as long as you'd like. And clearly, Paul, you've provided some tremendous information here this morning. And is there any other closing comments you'd like to make?
I just, am so glad to be the person to kick the morning off for you. and I really appreciate the opportunity to visit with all of you folks. The truth is that there's a lot of success there waiting for you.
Right.
We just need to help make that happen together. And I did put my contact information in the chat as well. You can see a little bit of it over this shoulder. So feel free to reach out to me. I do work with several networking groups, job seeker networking groups. You see one of them listed there, the Outstanding Careers Group. And so if you happen to be among the LGBTQ community, that group is a safe place for you to come and work on your job search process with other people who are in a similar situation and a similar background. I also co-facilitate a group called Executives in Job Transition, and another one called the Yo-Joe Club, that's Young Job Seekers Club, for those under 30. The Executives in Job Transition is for pretty much anybody at all. And all three of those groups are strategic peer support groups. They're designed so that everybody gets, say, equal amount of time, 10 minutes, and you'll give your 30-second introduction, another minute and a half update on where you're at in your job search, and then you'll ask a question. What's your greatest challenge in your job search this week or this month? And then the group will give you their thoughts and ideas on how to overcome that challenge. And people find those groups to be amazingly helpful in their job search because they walk away with some actionable tips that they can do that day or the next day to improve their job search. So if you're interested in any of those, I'd love to have you come join us. Just reach out to me. Or if you'd like to learn more about how I can help you with your job search, I'm happy to do that. Quick phone calls, 5-10 minute conversation, never ever a charge. First consultation, always at no cost. Just reach out. Let's talk. Be happy to help you. Bill, thank you so much for this time in this forum. And congratulations on putting together a really fantastic day.
Yeah, and thank you for being for kicking this off in such a tremendous way. I love your energy and I love your passion for what it is that you do. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording and we'll go from there.
Bye, gang.